somebody along the way told me not to be associating my identity with my net worth. I wish someone had told me sooner, because it was I think I did for a long time.
Really?
Yes, I did. And I thought that was my measure of success. That was my measuring stick. And it actually was probably a source of days that I didn't maybe do as good as I could have done, because it throws you for a loop. This investment went bad. Wait a minute, let me go look into that. Business is down this month. Why is it down? Let's talk to marketing instead of what's in the pipeline should be the questions. And so ever since somebody gave me that advice, life got a lot easier.
Welcome to The Profitable Cleaner, a podcast on commercial cleaning sales and entrepreneurship.
Marketing is I'll be honest with you. So marketing, when it comes to specific niches like lawyers or dental practices or janitorial, you really have to know that niche.
Yeah.
And so it's probably, I'm like typically on the marketing side. You're obviously on the client side. What's that been like working with a marketing company as a lawyer?
Interesting question. It's been a road, that's for sure. So I started off kind of just like, where do I go from here? Who do I call? And so I was speaking with my friends, and they were telling me basically the things that you can find out from just talking to ChatGPT, that like put up a billboard near a hospital, get a commercial, whatever. So then I started texting my attorney buddies that I went to law school with, and I narrowed it down to one company. And so they first built my website, and then they were supposed to do data on it. And so it was not an annual fee, it was a monthly fee. And I didn't have to, and the term was month to month. And first month, they were fine. They got all the information they needed. Second month, I thought we were going to launch. And then my point of contact was sick with COVID for 3 weeks, and just nothing moved for 3 weeks. I'm like, okay, so why did I pay for this month? I don't get it. And they just didn't have any interest in the success of my business. So then I moved on from them to a guy right now who's more of a freelance guy.
Yeah.
And I can give him assignments and tell him that it is going to be a flat fee. Here's what here's the work. Here's the pay. If you want to do it, great. If not, that's fine too.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm starting to learn every day, kind of on the way to get web traffic and things like that. But it's all, I've never even asked the question, how does one get web traffic?
Yeah.
And so through this whole process, I'm learning, and it's looking like stuff that I'm gaining a better understanding of every day. I'm starting to give him direction. You do this, do that, do this, do that, instead of like him telling me, here's all the things that we should do.
Yeah.
And so a little more every month. And, it's been, but to what you were saying, I would agree with you. The people that don't have the niche in the specific, dentistry, family medicine, an attorney's office, they, like the person I have right now, it seems like he's trying to kind of make me an influencer, which he didn't ever say those things, but the content that he's providing on social media to try to drive web traffic looks and feels like what I understand to be an influencer.
Here you go, man. You're an influencer now doing a podcast.
Yeah, right.
Well, hey, welcome, man.
Thank you.
So Ben Kennedy, we met actually through our children. You were the very first official soccer coach of my son. And man, I remember you running out there with those boys and just like herding cats at like 3-4 years old.
All you had to do was make sure they knew the direction to go and try to get them to focus 100% of the time. If you could succeed, you will win.
That's exactly right.
No strategy other than that.
But man, I want to use this time to get to know Ben, the professional, and also Ben, the person.
Okay.
So a lot of people listening to this show, we're all entrepreneurs and business owners. We say all the time on this show that the business that you do is great, but the business will never outgrow you, the individual.
Right.
So I'm always curious about the stories and the background on how one gets into business. So maybe for those listening, give us like the brief overview of who Ben is as the person and who Ben is as the professional and what you do.
Well, Ben, the person, I'm a dad, like you talked about, 2 8-year-olds, the twins, husband, father, lawyer, son, brother, and I'm a personal injury attorney. I run my office out of Centennial. Man, the way I got into it, just my wife and I met at CU, came out here, and we ended up staying together till law school. Moved back here after law school. First job I got actually was during the financial crisis at, of all places, a bank. And within the first 6 months of working as, new young lawyer at this bank, the bank was taken over by the feds, and I was suddenly wondering, well, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? And the first person that actually was nice enough to give me a job in 2010, might have been 2009, was Mike McDivitt in Colorado Springs.
With McDivitt Law Firm?
Yeah, McDivitt Law Firm. And all I did for him was drive around and do intakes. I did like 100 intakes a month. And so from doing that, I saw basically the situation of what it meant to be a person who is seeking a personal injury lawyer, exactly what kind of help they're looking for, exactly what they want. And from there, I moved back to Denver to take a job at the Sawaya Law Firm. And I was between the Sawaya and Backus and Shanker for 10 years. And during the pandemic, I just said, my kids' school is closing. My wife's in the hospitality industry. I need to be a little bit more flexible than I'm being at Backus and Shanker right now. I think I can do this solo for a little bit. We'll see how it goes. And so far, this is what I've been doing since then.
Never looked back. Huh?
Never looked back. No, and I hopefully won't ever have to.
So talk to me about, I think there's a version of like people who say they're lawyers. Like I know you as the human, the dad version of Ben, right? But then like you hear the term lawyer and I think people automatically like stiffen up a little bit, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. That's actually the main thing I try to differentiate myself. I mean, at the end of the day, we are a dot we're a dot in the middle of an endless space. Nothing really matters. We only really matter to each other, right? And if we matter to each other, then the question should be, well, if I'm going to matter, if someone's going to matter to me, or if I'm going to matter to somebody else, I'm going to need to not be that stiff guy, right?
Yeah.
So I try to be pretty approachable. I like to be the guy that you can just call on the phone. On the number on my website, it goes to my cell phone. I answer it. I answer the text messages. I try to convey that when you call me, you're going to be speaking to me. Get comfortable with it. You're never going to be speaking to my paralegal. You're never going to be speaking to my call center. And so if I'm not a person that's easy to talk to, I just assume that they would not want to be my client. So
yeah, you're kind of humanizing the legal process. I want to go back a little bit. So financial crisis, you're working for a bank. You said the feds take it over. Were you actually there like when the feds came in?
They let the entire legal department go the week prior, except for general counsel. And so, but I had stories from past coworkers of, my understanding, it was basically like you see in The Big Short, or Wolf of Wall Street, put your pens down, stop working, the whole nine. Yeah.
What a time to be alive, man. I know. Great experience, though.
It was. I've definitely never been exposed to anything quite like that since then. I just kind of ran with the PI thing. But yeah, it was incredible experience just kind of seeing what it was. I mean, banking industry during that time. It was a changing environment. Dodd-Frank was being rolled out. Banks that were coming close to their capital reserve requirements needed to figure out how they're going to increase their budget to be able to roll out Dodd-Frank requirements. And I don't know if that's exactly what caused the bank I was working for to be taken over, but I think it had something to do with it.
What's up, my profitable cleaners? Listen, you guys know that running a cleaning business isn't just about cleaning. It's about growth, trust, building a legacy, and making true impact. That's where Swept comes in. With Swept, it's simple, powerful. It's an app that you can track your cleaner attendance with geofence clock-ins, streamlined processes, team communication, and save hours on payroll. It's the ultimate tool designed specifically for janitorial businesses just like yours. Take control, save time, focus on what matters most, growing your business and spending time with your family. Swept. Clean better, grow faster. If you guys are interested in Swept, click the link below in the show notes and partner with one of the best in the industry.
How much time does a lawyer spend in the courtroom?
Great question. I think it depends on what you practice. So when I was at Backus and Shanker, I managed their disability department, and disability claims and the way a disability department is run at a high volume firm like that require a lot of claims. So those attorneys that we had hired over there were in the courtroom all day long. Now that was administrative court. I like to say it's kind of pretend court. Yes, there are judges. They sit on a bench. They are in a robe, but at the end of the day, they're not appointed or voted in. They responded to an employment ad, and these are the requirements of their employment. So it's sort of pretend court, even though they look and act and feel like a judge. They're not really judges. Somebody like me, I'm in court maybe a few times a year. Courtroom proceedings, such as depositions, anything for discovery. I mean, that happens frequently. It's part of the job throughout the representation, especially if you file suit. But when you actually go into court or go into trial, it's very seldomly 5% of the time at the most.
What's that like though? So if you're in court a few times a year, regardless of the situation or what you're there for, there has to be some sort of pre-game anxiety, right? Leading up to it. Or I've always how do lawyers prepare for that day in the courtroom? Because some of it's presentation, some of it's transferring information.
Sure. Yes, it depends on what you're there for. If you're there for just a hearing on a small issue, if you're there for just a small issue hearing, or if you're there for a trial, it's totally different. A small issue hearing, it could be open and shut. It could be the judge doesn't understand the briefs or a point you're trying to make in your brief, something like that, and they want you to come in and have a hearing about it. But for trial, the preparation is all encompassing. That week you're in trial, and the week leading up to it, and it's a ways out, so you see it happening. It's a big preparation. You want to make sure your ducks are in a line. The only reason you're going is because you think you can win, and the only reason you think you can win is because you think the evidence is strong. You have to have how you're going to present all that strong evidence down to a T, know exactly the gameplay of when it's going to be presented, how it's going to be presented. So, because at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is just convince regular people that you picked at the beginning of the trial of my side is right.
So are you picking the people?
Yeah.
So I guess
it goes all quickly.
Me.
It goes very quickly. In trial, you have jury selection just before trial starts. And when I say just before trial starts, you pick the jury and then you give your opening statement. It's kind of weird like that. You would think you've picked your jury. Okay, the jury can wrap their head around the idea that they're going to be jurors for the next few days. Nope, everybody's sent home, and you guys, you're going in to listen to this trial.
How do you as the lawyer identify this would be a good person to put in the jury?
A lot goes into that. I've heard so many discussions as to you want this guy or that lady or that other lady. And I have not been able to say who I think is a good juror or a bad juror. Who I'm looking for is somebody reasonable, someone normal. I have found that the animated person is not the best person to be on a jury. That's just my personal opinion. Other lawyers disagree with me, but I've found that there's no real rule of thumb as to who should be on. Obviously, you want people who are going to agree with you. Some people think it's their politics that will agree with them. Some people think it's their background that will make them agree with you. I think it's just because I said the only reason I would ever have a case in trial is because I believe I would win. And I believe I would win because I think normal people would agree with me. So I don't want the not normal people, I guess is the best way to say it.
So do both? I mean, it's probably good. I don't know this stuff. Shows that I haven't spent a lot of time in court, but do both lawyers from each side have say on the jury?
Yes. So there's a process. You get strikes, people you don't want on the jury. You are the jury that's left after the strikes are used by both sides is the jury that you proceed with.
No shit, man.
Yeah.
That's wild. Any crazy courtroom stories that come to mind that you've seen, or juror stories? Juror stories or courtroom stories, they all kind of blend together at a certain point. None are coming to mind right now. No, you're fine. Because I always think when I think of lawyers in court, I think of like big time business litigation.
Sure.
My good friend and producer here, Jay, and I used to work with one of the biggest litigation lawyers in the country.
Okay.
I think of that type of courtroom, or I think of like criminal defense.
Sure.
So how often are you guys going to court on like a personal injury case? Or does it get settled typically before?
I like to say that my cases, if I have handled them if I'm the first attorney handling it, which I'm not always, but usually am. If I'm the first attorney handling it, it almost always settles. I say that because I was trained well. The ethical rules that were beaten into me in law school. And if I think if an attorney just does what they're supposed to do in a viable case, it's going to settle out. If it doesn't settle out, that means something was wrong with it, right? Your client didn't do something you told him to do. You forgot to tell your client something. There was some evidence that you've seen that you can't find. Something is wrong, and that's why it would go to trial. I haven't had a case proceed to trial since I've been a solo. And the last trial my last trial was, I think, 2016, same year my kids were born. So they're now 8. It's been a while, but it's always part of the process. It is filing suit doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go to trial. In fact, it still probably means it won't. But I would say maybe 20% of my cases end up filing suit. The litigation process begins. You go into discovery, and at some point in time, the sides come closer together. You find out some more information from a deposition, from a document during discovery, and then it becomes more obvious that one side or the other has more leverage, and an agreement usually comes. I'm all about talking to people. Some lawyers are not. I've co-counseled with people where I suggest, well, why don't we just give co-counsel a call and have a conversation? No, let's not do that. Like, let's build this, let's just see where their head's at. Can we do that? And I mean, they're probably not going to give us too much. They've got to talk to their client, but nothing can be, we can't lose anything by just calling defense counsel and seeing if they want to negotiate a settlement. I'm all on the side of let's talk to them, see where their head's at. Maybe we can find a path forward for our client. Maybe we can't, but at the end of the day, we're probably not going to get anywhere by not talking to anybody.
I think that's really well said. That actually brings me to my next. I've always been fascinated by lawyers, man, and I want to dive into the business model here in just a minute. But would you say a lot of your job is negotiating with just other attorneys?
Yeah, it's a good It's a good portion of the job. Negotiating with other attorneys, negotiating with insurance carriers, negotiating with health insurance. Something almost none of my clients know going into it is that a big part of their settlement probably will have to go to repaying their health insurance, whether they have Medicaid, United Healthcare, Cigna, Medicare, any of these health insurers. So they get a claim saying they suffered a loss as a result of the negligence of the other person too. Had the negligent party not engaged in their negligent behavior, well, this health insurance company wouldn't be out the $5,000 or so bucks it costs to, send this guy to the ER or whatever.
Sure.
So that's the idea. And so they get a claim on top of your claim, essentially. And it's a lien on their claim. And the first thing you do is you want to try to negotiate those. Okay, you think you're owed this amount. This is what you said you paid for this medical service. And I try to get those negotiated before the settlement even starts, just so you don't have to do all that stuff later.
What type of like negotiation, like what would you consider a successful negotiation? Like just in general, like someone listening, like a lot of people listening, they have to negotiate salaries with employees. They have to negotiate, contracts with clients and all that. Like from your vantage point, someone that actually does do legal contracts as well. What's successful negotiation mean to you?
Well, successful negotiation if I'm wearing my lawyer hat, would be making the client happy, right? I got an outcome that my client could live with, that they wanted, that they thought that they couldn't get themselves. I always tell them, I understand what you want, and there's another side to this. There's another side to this story, and to get more, you're going to want to give some more. And throughout these discussions of numbers, we're having conversations about every single possible point that we could. And it just moves the needle a little bit further and a little bit further. Sometimes the negotiation can take months. Sometimes you can get it done in a 5-minute phone call. It all depends on how close to the other side your head is and how close they are to you, right?
Would you say over the years you've had to master the art of communication?
Mastered? My wife would say no. I work at it every day, so I would say probably not. I try to be good at it. Like I said, I try to be somebody that is approachable, that provides insightful information to my clients. I want them to be confident at the end of the day that they did the right thing by pursuing this legal matter, whether it's me or whoever, because they originally started calling lawyers because they thought they had some righteous matter to pursue. And they get all caught up in their head about how righteous it is as well. And so that's a very important thing, is just simply making your client happy, and throughout this whole process, managing their expectation as well.
Well said. All right. This brings me to my next question, and you teed it up perfectly. And I think a lot of people listening can relate to unreasonable clients, no matter the industry. How often are you dealing with like unreasonable clients, and maybe the terms of like, hey, I got hit by a car, I want $1 million. And you're like, that's not it. Or talk to me, like, cause I have to imagine as a personal injury lawyer, you probably see some crazy shit.
Yeah. So I'll tell you my process. So I think I'm pretty good at getting my client, unless they have some sort of mental disorder, which I've had many of those as well, but I'm pretty good at getting them to a place where they're not unreasonable at the end of the phone call. Sometimes they come into a phone call or an email with that tone of unreasonableness that we've all seen before, whether you're working in the law or cleaning floors at McDonald's. unreasonable is not, it's all over the place, and we all know what it looks like. So what I generally do to prevent that from happening, because you don't want to be the person dealing with your unreasonable client, is I talk to them throughout the whole process. And through that process, they're getting to know me. I'm getting to know them. If that whole thing is not happening, and you only know it, you only know it when you know it, right? And if you're wondering, well, I wonder what they're thinking, that probably means you don't know them well enough yet, and you need to be talking to them more. And so when we're talking, all we have to talk about really is what's going on in their case. And these are the things that I need. I need you to get, and this is where the next step is going. Oh, this is the reason why we're not on the next step. This is what has to be done to get on the next step. So they know what's happening all the time. They have nothing left to question. And if they're going to come to an understanding, and they're going to have been educated significantly throughout those conversations. So when we come to those negotiation tables, they have a good understanding of what is reasonable and why isn't, and this hasn't been done yet, because both myself and my attorney agree that this isn't, what they're offering is not reasonable. And we're here to hopefully get them to be reasonable. And you have similar but tweaked conversations with the opposition that you've just been having with your client that convinced you yourself as the lawyer, yeah, this is the reasonable figure, and they're trying to jack them around. I don't know what the deal is, but let's figure it out. That's really all it is.
All right. I know you guys are wondering, how can we keep our cleaning crews engaged and informed, and it doesn't have to feel like a struggle? With Team Engine, you can now automate messages, update teams in real time, and bridge language gaps with their built-in AI-powered translations. Whether it's scheduling, last-minute changes, or sharing critical updates, Team Engine keeps your workforce connected and productive. Say goodbye to miscommunication and hello to smoother operations. Visit teamengine.io to get started today.
What's a typical PI case look like? Are you the attorney being paid on contingency, or are you?
PI case is always contingency, with no exception in my career in 15 years. So the cases that come in the door are, everybody knows about the people that have been in a car accident. Have you been in a car accident? Commercials.
Yeah, the Frank Azars.
Yeah, then with the car accident, Frank Azar would tell you they're actually a subset. There's car accident, there's truck accidents, there's boat accident. They're all just accidents. And it's basically anybody that's been injured due to the negligence of another within the statute of limitations of that specific claim, whatever it may be. So they may have been injured in a car accident, most frequent. Second most frequent, you're injured on the premises of another. And those are basically the two main ones. Third one is if you think your doctor did not meet the standard of care, and the failure to meet the standard of care in that procedure caused injuries to his or her patient.
So how do you set your contingency fee? Is that standard? Do you set it?
It's pretty standard in the industry. There's very small, and it's funny how some clients will actually be moved by moving a 0.1%.
So what's a typical contingency fee?
33 the industry standard is pretty much 33 1/3%. It's pretty much also most firms, most attorneys also include an escalator clause in there. So if it has to litigate, it goes to 40%. I will, depending on the circumstance, I will waive that provision. There's also provision in there about how the attorney covers all their costs, but I get all my costs back at the end of once we make the recovery. And
costs would entail paralegal research.
No.
What's an attorney cost?
So
I want to break this down for
really
someone that has no idea.
Yep, really simple. There is usually an investigation fee. Pay an investigator to go get the building blocks of the case to start it off. Maybe that's $500. And then you will need the medical file for your client. You've got to send requests to XYZ number of hospitals, and actually they charge a lot of money to get the medical records. So there's that. Then there's any experts that you might have to hire. There's like, for example, let's say I had a case where my client was injured by something in one of those kiosks in a mall, a mall kiosk. And I don't know, I'm an attorney. I don't know anything about kiosks, but so I have to get a kiosk expert or somebody who designs kiosks to explain why it's designed this way and why it was designed this way to keep people safe, and how that might be different from the kiosk I'm dealing with. For example,
how do you personally decipher cases to take and not to take?
If it makes sense to me,
yeah,
like anything, like in any investment, if it makes sense to you, if it doesn't make sense, I don't take it. I listen to the client until I think I have wrapped my head around their situation. And I will give my conclusion at the end of it. This is something I think I can help you, or this is not something I think I can help you with. Needless to say, I'm only going to be providing services to people I think I can help.
That you can win for.
Yeah, I'm not going to spend time or give the client the impression I think I can help them if I don't think I can help them.
So going back a little bit, like, you're very pragmatic with your approach to like being an attorney. Like, what sparked the interest of going down the realm of being a lawyer?
Wow. Okay. So I was in high school, and I don't know if I've ever told you about my high school career, but my high school career was a little bit different than a lot of people. So I went to a new high school starting off, 15 years old, don't know a single person there. And within the first month, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer. So now the guy that nobody knows now has no hair, and to a 15-year-old, this all sucks.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of a freaky, like the freak kid for a long time. And then sophomore or junior year, something like that, I had mock trial. It was a class taught by Miss Reitenberg. And she had me as lead counsel. I was pretty timid, just from the experience that I had up until then. And I just ran with it. Something just clicked. It was a fake murder trial that we did for our mock trial. And I can remember we were defense counsel, and I was lead counsel for defense counsel. Something just clicked, and I was like, I think I might be able to do this. And other side, the plaintiff or the prosecution gave their opening statement. Everybody listened to it. And then I can remember I gave my opening statement as defense, and people were responding, if that makes sense. And I could tell I must be doing better than they did. And you can feel it from the people that are listening. And that is actually not a whole lot different than a real courtroom. You can feel what the people around you are thinking and opining in their own heads. And that was kind of the goal going forward. And it is kind of the same.
What was it? So you're a cancer survivor.
I am, yeah.
Wow, that's incredible, man. What was it like being diagnosed with testicular cancer at 15 years old? Talk to me about that.
Well, it was pretty awful. It just started with pain in my testicle. My dad took me on a vacation to Europe. It was just my dad and my sister and myself. We were in Paris, and my dad, like a lot of kids from the 80s, was really cheap. So of course we're not staying in Paris. We're staying like outside of Paris and have to transport ourselves somehow every day into Paris. And I'm walking and I'm just feeling all this pain. I'm like, Dad, I can't walk. And had to explain to him, a 15-year-old kid doesn't want to tell your dad, this is why I can't walk. But, I eventually had to say, it feels like I've been kicked in the nuts and that pain is not going away. Yeah. I don't know why. And so we actually, I don't know if we went to a doctor there, but we ended up in a doctor's office and they examined me and they keep referring me then they've referred me to a urologist and they referred me to an oncologist. And then it's maybe we need to remove one. Then it's maybe we need some chemo. Then we need a whole lot more chemo. And then it was just a whole lot of that until one day it's gone. But it was a snowball of things.
Were you scared throughout that?
Not at first. The more you learn every day, You're getting a little bit more scared. As a kid going through it, they have a duty to your parents to be communicating to you, but no one's really communicating to me of just exactly what they're looking for. Now, at 15, I had the wherewithal to kind of understand, well, I'm going to an oncologist. They're looking for cancer. But at this point, my parents had not mentioned cancer or what they're looking for. We just have to go to this next doctor's appointment. And then I can remember thinking, okay, it's possible I have cancer, but I'll probably be fine. And then I get into, yep, you do have cancer. And then they tell you, you probably won't need surgery. Okay, then you do need surgery. And then it's maybe you probably won't need chemo. And then you do need chemo. And it's probably 1 week of chemo will probably do it. And 1 week turns into 6 months. And this is all probably we caught it early. This is going to be controlled. And then you get news that it spread to your lymph nodes or it spread to your kidney. So there was a lot of optimistic communication followed by a lot of negative things happening thereafter until one day, Dr. Hilden, who actually practices now in Denver, if she's not retired, says to you, the recent scan came back detecting no cancer. You're in this weird thing that they use for no other illness called remission, and which doesn't mean you're cured. It just means you got to keep getting these scans every so many years to make sure that you don't have cancer anymore.
Did you ever think you were going to die?
Yeah, it crosses your brain, and it's a scary thing for it to cross your brain when you're 16, 15 years old. Okay, it's spread to my kidneys, it's spread to my lymph nodes. I'm not an expert in these things, but this all sounds bad. And cancer is one of those things where, as a kid, that's one of the things that kills you, right? Yeah. So yeah, your head goes there. Like, okay, so what's that going to look like when you're 15, 16 years old? How are you going to deal with that? It was intense.
How'd you process that?
You talk to your friends, you talk to your family, and you talk to your doctors. You put one foot in front of the other. You still got science, you still got math, you still got sports to do. And life doesn't stop just because you get cancer.
Jeez, man, that's incredible. That's praise God there, dude.
Right.
I can't even imagine that.
What's up, Profitable Cleaner listeners? Quick question for you. Are you using 5 to 7 different platforms just to manage the everyday operations of your commercial cleaning company? If so, let us help you consolidate that into one platform. Introducing you USource. Go to usource.com, book your free demo today, and actually get started on your trial for 60 days. No charge for 60 days, all from time and attendance to reporting, vendor management, operations, sales. It's time you stop using 5 to 7 platforms and consolidate into one. So listeners, don't forget, go to usource.com and start your account today.
It almost sounds like going back to your mock trial and Miss Hilden's class or whatever.
Yeah. Ms. Reitenberg.
Miss Reitenberg.
Dr. Hilton was my
Okay, there we
oncologist.
go.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like doing that mock trial gave you a sense of like confidence and purpose.
Yes, it did. Yeah. I think it was confidence that day in high school when up until then, I didn't have a whole lot of things to be confident about. And so I thought, let's see where this goes.
No shit, man. So now fast forward, you're an adult, you're a business owner, you're a dad, husband, all of these things. You dealt with a pretty crazy thing with a cancer diagnosis at 15, and you dealt with it how you dealt with it. What's Ben do now in his darkest moments to deal with the attrition of business, the frustrations of home life? What?
Attritions of business, frustrations of home life. There's always a next thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm always telling the kids in soccer, there's always a next play.
Yeah.
Stop yipping and yapping at the other guy. Don't let your head hang. You've got a job to do. You know, we're dads, we're fathers, we're whatever it is our jobs are.
Yep.
We're sons, we're probably siblings. And, you know, if you we're friends. And I think of the jobs that I have and the people that I touch and the people that count on me. And that's what keeps me going. If I'm doing a good job, I feel good. If I'm not, I don't. And it's that simple. The amount in my bank shouldn't be what makes me feel good or bad. It should be, how am I conducting my day? Am I making sure I'm responsible to those I need to be responsible to? And am I enjoying it? And that gets me by.
I think that's well said. Actually, I think the most simple thing that you just said there is the best thing. There's a entrepreneur I follow named Naval Ravikant, and oh man, he's the best. He talks about, are you doing things that you enjoy?
Yeah.
That simple. And he's like, everyone worries about like success being on the forefront of, okay, I need to make this and then I'll feel a certain way, a certain sense of accomplishment. But he's like, actually, you should double down on being joyful first, because that's actually going to quicken the process to becoming successful.
I'd agree with that. So I think somebody along the way told me not to be associating my identity with my net worth. I wish someone had told me sooner, because it was I think I did for a long time.
Really?
Yes, I did. And I thought that was my measure of success. That was my measuring stick. And it actually is probably a source of days that I didn't maybe do as good as I could have done, because it throws you for a loop. This investment went bad. Wait a minute, let me go look into that. Business is down this month. Why is it down? Let's talk to marketing instead of what's in the pipeline should be the questions. And so ever since somebody gave me that advice, life got a lot easier.
What made the shift there? Like, what was it? A moment? Was there an event? Something happened? Because I think a lot of people attach their identity to
their bank account.
Yeah,
I think so too. I could tell you kind of where and when I was at in my life. You know, it was after I'd gone so I'd probably been solo like a year or two. And I thought to myself, all right, I think I probably have more than my parents ever did when I was being brought up. And my kids are only 5 or 4. I'm feeling pretty good and the next day happens and an investment probably went, I know what happened. So what happened is that an old friend and colleague, and was actually a mentor to me, defrauded me of a lot of money, close to 6 figures, and presented it as a business opportunity. This was my very first boss before I went to law school. And so I had known the guy at that time, 16, 17 years. I trusted him. I thought I had done enough due diligence in light of our relationship to give him the money. And he didn't exactly take the money and run, but if you're in business long enough, I think you're going to come across a fraudster at some point, some more than others. This guy ended up being a fraudster, and he had completely told me a fugazi, or with linings of truth to it. And I ended up giving him, I think it was just north of 80 grand. And once he didn't make payment on the payment schedule, to start off the payment schedule. And of course, you start getting every excuse in the book. You've dealt with these people too, I can tell. You start getting and you start waking up wondering, what's he going to tell me today? I wonder what he's going to tell me today, because it would be something different every single day. And that happened to me. And when you are defrauded of a significant number, and to me, that was a significant number, it's embarrassing. You don't want to tell anybody. You want to go crawl in a little hole. And I started thinking to myself how this is setting me back with my goals. This was actually supposed to be something that contributed to my, goal of that number. And from that number, I was going to get to that number. And I got over it just thinking, there's a way that I should be conducting myself that is husband, father, lawyer, friend, son, brother. And this is freaking out about this and spending all my time trying to shake this guy down is not a productive use of my time. And it is really doing all of these people who rely on that job person. It's really doing all of them a disservice. And that's ultimately what I thought about and why I was not feeling good about it. I'm like, at the end of the day, I can go get 80 grand back. And I'm going to work some activities into my calendar so I can rest at night knowing I did what I could do to try to recover what I could. But since I kind of had that moment of, this doesn't define you. You could have lost everything and it still wouldn't define you, because tomorrow's a new day with new opportunity.
Well, thank you for sharing that. What's the husband and wife conversation like when you lose 80 grand?
I called my sister first. She's like my best friend. And I just said, this is the situation. I don't know what to do. I know that I'm supposed to go tell my wife, Jacqueline, and I just don't know how to do it. And she had a long talk with me. You just go do it. You've known her for 20 years. She knows you. And my sister had this conversation with me, and it was a little weird to have it with my sister about my wife, but I didn't know how to move forward. I was afraid.
Sure.
And so I just told her what the situation was, and basically how Emily told me to start the conversation. And it just went from there. And at the end of the day, she wasn't mad at me. We both went into it understanding what the investment was. And I told her what I was going to do going forward to be able to try to pursue this and recover some things, which ended up getting a recovery from it. But also told her at the same time, I have all these other jobs. We have our kids. I have you. And I think as long as she knew my headspace was okay, we were a team and we were moving forward with it. And it was just a blip in the road.
Yeah.
Had I not told her about it, I think it could have gone differently.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Every time I make bad business decision, and I've made them before. I've had my losses too. I always have this moment of like shaken confidence,
Yeah.
because like, yeah, you're like, I feel a sense of like embarrassment.
Yeah.
Feel a sense of insecurity, which isn't typical for me. And then it's like, then I just have to embrace full effing accountability.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this was my decision. I own it. I also own the solution.
Yep.
And it sounds like you did that. What happened to that? What happened to that guy, or where's that guy now?
So I was able to recover everything I lost, plus a little bit of the interest that he owes me. He still owes me tens of thousands, but I don't know what he's up to actually. When I piece it back over the years, he was a guy that told stories that I never called him out on. And as adults, you run into people like this. They walk amongst us, adults that tell stories. And, most people grow out of it, and there's some of us that don't, and he's one of them. I can remember him telling me that, I was on the US ski team and thinking, and this was like in the early 2000s, and I Googled him and there was no record of him being on the US ski team. And I just figured he's a person that tells stories and and Google's new enough to where he hasn't quite put together that he can't be telling that lie for much longer because no one's going to believe him. But I should have picked that up. That was like right when I met him, and I should have called him out on it. Never did. But saw him tell these little tiny stories from that day, kind of throughout our friendship and relationship and business relationship. Just little stupid stories like that just made him look cooler, And I shouldn't have gone into business with a guy that tells stories. I think about that all the time. Never give somebody money if you think they're telling a story.
That's well said, man. Wow. What would you say your final takeaways, like now that you're, 5 years removed from that or whatever, like what did you learn from a business perspective about that?
Fraudsters are out there. My radar is up on them all the time now. He wasn't the first one I had encountered, just the one that burned me the worst. Yeah. And he was organized. He was professional. He was a person close in my life that I trusted deeply, and he knew it. And I ask more questions now. I want to see real documents. I want to see, I want to have some sort of assurances. What are you going to give me for assurances if I give you this money? Because that is all you're trying to get. So in return for that, get creative. Somebody might say, well, like what? That's for you to come up with.
Yeah,
you want the money to come out of my pocket.
Exactly right.
What can you do to make me feel more of a sense of calm that money will be coming back here eventually?
Yeah. No, I think it's an interesting aspect, man. I've seen a lot of people get, their first wave of success in business and then automatically think they're investors. And man,
that was probably me.
there's a certain skill. And now I do know some actual true investors.
Yeah.
And how they go about things is so strategic and so calm and almost slow.
Yeah.
That none of it's actually sexy.
Yeah.
And they will play the long game more than anyone I know.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of like what being a real investor is, that obviously if you're not an investment portfolio manager or whatever, but like just seeing these entrepreneurs that, walk into $500,000, now I'm going to be an investor. It's like, there's going to be some bumps along the way. Yeah.
I mean, there's always comes back to, you don't know what you don't know.
That's exactly right.
Right? You don't know what you don't know. I mean, we identify these investment opportunities in one way or another. They come across our desk. It tickles something in us that says, I need to find out more.
Yeah.
And I think after that experience, I just learned that finding out more is a bigger process than I gave it on that one.
Yeah, totally. Random question for you, man. My last question for you. Will your wife's name is Jacqueline, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Jacqueline, Ben, or your daughter listen to this podcast?
They have not listened to it yet. No.
Well, if they do, look into that camera right there. And do you have a message for your daughter, Ben, or Jacqueline?
Love you guys. Do your best. Can't go wrong.
There you go. This guy is such a motivator when it comes to being a coach and on the soccer field. And it was actually kind of cool, man. It's no secret to Ben and I, but we had a rough championship game.
Two rough championship games. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were in consecutive weeks too.
Yeah.
It was double whammy.
Yeah. So, we saw our boys go through some adversity, and like, it was cool to watch you be a dad in that moment with your son who was struggling.
I realized while it was happening, I was in the middle of being motivator, assistant coach, pseudo assistant coach, honorary pseudo assistant coach, to realizing that the emotions had crossed a threshold. You can put that head down for a second. You've got people that you need to get back to, but dad hat needs to be worn for a second here.
No doubt, man.
Yeah.
It's I always tell my son, do you want me to talk to you as coach, or do you want me to talk to you as dad?
Do you ask the question?
I ask the question every single time that we walk off the soccer field, because I made a lot of mistakes early on. Like, I almost feel bad for coaches' kids because I think they get the brunt of it.
They do, yeah.
And so, like, I was almost like extra hard on my son and my expectation, and I would speak to him in a coach tone.
Yeah.
And then he couldn't decipher it. So I finally had to explain, there's dad and there's coach. And if you hear, he actually will not call me dad on the soccer field. He calls me coach.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, how do you want me to speak to you? And after that loss, he said, can you speak to me as coach? And I said, no, I think I'm going to speak to you as your dad.
Okay.
Like, yeah, like, just like, sometimes there's not always a coaching moment,
Yeah. No, it was a situation I normally on the sports field would be all next play.
Yeah.
Next play is always the next thing. On your feet, you're no good to your team when you're on your butt. And I think all of those things did come out when Benjamin is sitting in the middle of the field crying. And after the third one, I realized, yeah, I could throw him as many of those as I wanted him. He's not going to move, and he is well shook from whatever just happened. So
he'll be better for it, man.
Yeah, I hope so.
No, he will. He's a good player, man. You're a good dad. You're a good coach, and a good podcast guest. So thank you for joining me today, brother.
I tried my best. Thank you.